A poor boy offered his kidney to a billionaire's son, but her response shocked the entire world. 12-year-old Malik Johnson lived in a neighborhood people only mentioned in whispers. Cracked sidewalks, abandoned buildings, streetlights that flickered like they were tired of trying. Most kids his age worried about video games or homework. Malik worried about rent, electricity, and whether his mom had eaten that day. His shoes were torn from the front, letting dust sneak in with every step. His backpack, once bright red in kindergarten, was now faded and stitched 3 different times by his mother's careful hands. But his heart, bigger than the skyscrapers he dreamed of but never touched. Every afternoon, when school ended and the last bell rang, Malik didn't run home like the rest. Instead, he stood on the busiest intersection in the city, a small bucket and an old squeegee in his hands, washing car windows for a few dollars. Drivers often ignored him. Some rolled up their windows. Some pretended not to see the skinny boy with hopeful eyes. But Malik never complained. He saved every coin, sometimes slipping a few into his mother's purse when she wasn't looking. His mom, Angela Johnson, worked 3 jobs: janitor, hotel cleaner, night shift cashier, yet still struggled to keep the lights from cutting out. Malik's dream wasn't toys or phones. He dreamt of a day when his mother could sleep without setting an alarm. The day everything changed. It was a warm afternoon when Malik paused his work to help an elderly man cross the busy road. The old man leaned heavily on Malik's small shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, son, not many stop anymore." As they reached the other side, Malik noticed a large crowd gathered around the city hospital across the street. TV vans, cameras, reporters speaking urgently. Huge posters of a wealthy family plastered everywhere. Curious, Malik stepped closer. People whispered, "It's the billionaire's son, he's very sick. They're searching for a rare donor, no match yet. Poor child, money can't save him this time." Malik didn't understand much about medical terms. But he understood one thing. A child just like him was fighting for his life. He stared at the shining glass towers of the hospital, so clean and bright compared to his world. He felt something stir inside him, a feeling he couldn't name. He didn't know it at that moment. But the path he took toward that crowd would lead him into a story that would shake the entire city. A poor boy from a forgotten street, and a billionaire family who thought they'd seen everything. About to be connected by a miracle nobody saw coming. Inside that towering white hospital, protected by guards, doctors, and tinted glass walls, lay Ethan Hale, the 12-year-old only son of Victoria Hale, one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. The Hale name was printed on skyscrapers, airports, tech centers, charity wings, and entire districts. People said the Hales were too rich to fail, too connected to fall, and too powerful to ever face helplessness. But now, inside room 908 of St. Augustine Medical Tower, that illusion shattered. Ethan, pale and weak, had tubes running into his arms and machines humming beside him. He had a genetic kidney condition that grew worse each day, silently draining the life out of him. Doctors had tried medicine, therapies, experimental approaches. Nothing worked. The final verdict was clear, cruel, and urgent. Ethan needed a kidney transplant within weeks, perhaps days. But matching kidneys were rare, and finding a donor quickly was nearly impossible. Victoria Hale, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking, broke down for the first time in public. She appeared on the hospital steps, surrounded by microphones, press cameras, and security. Her voice trembled as she announced a reward of several $1 million for any matching donor. The world erupted. News channels ran headlines non-stop. Social media flooded with posts. Hospitals across the country received tens of thousands of calls. Some people volunteered out of empathy, others out of greed, but none were a match. Reporters camped outside the hospital 24 hours a day, updating the nation on Ethan's declining health. Some debated whether money should buy survival. Others wondered if it was fair that one child's illness became a national emergency simply because of wealth. But Malik Johnson, walking home from a long day of washing car windows, didn't think about any of that. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since morning, but he ignored it as he always did. He walked past the hospital entrance where the crowd was thickest. His shirt stuck to his back from the heat, his backpack strap dug into his shoulder. His hands smelled faintly of soap and car glass cleaner. But what captured him wasn't the noise of reporters. It was a hospital screen playing a news segment about Ethan. The screen showed a young boy hooked to machines, his breath shallow, his eyes barely open, his mother holding his hand with tears streaking down her face. Malik couldn't look away. Something inside him softened, tightened, and pulled all at once. He knew what it looked like when someone was fighting for life. He had seen his mother faint from exhaustion, seen neighbors collapse from stress, seen hunger steal energy from kids his age. But this boy looked like he was slipping away. The reporter's voice echoed through speakers. Doctors confirm that if a kidney donor is not found soon, Ethan Hale's condition will reach a critical point. Malik swallowed hard. He didn't know Ethan. They came from opposite universes, one from a mansion so large it had staff, private chefs, and automated security, the other from a cramped, rundown apartment where the lights sometimes shut off because bills weren't paid. But pain didn't care about money. Illness didn't check bank accounts. Malik stepped closer, pushing between adults until he reached the front of the hospital entrance. The massive posters of the Hale family towered above him. Beside him, two women whispered, "No match yet. None. Even with all that money, they still can't save him." Malik tugged at his torn sleeve, thinking. He remembered his mother's words, "We help if we can, Malik, even when we have little." He stared again at Ethan's picture. His heartbeat quickened. His palms felt warm. His chest tightened with something he couldn't describe, compassion, courage, fear, all mixed together. He whispered, barely loud enough for himself to hear, "I'll do it if it helps him live." His voice got lost in the noise around him, but in that moment something shifted in the universe. A boy who had nothing was willing to give the only thing he truly owned, his body, his health, his future, to save a child he'd never met. He didn't think of the money. He didn't think of reward posters or headlines. He only thought of a boy dying alone in a hospital room while the world watched helplessly. For Malik, the choice wasn't about wealth, fame, or recognition. It was simple: a life needed saving, and if he could be the one to save it, then he would. He stepped toward the hospital doors, his small hand trembling as he reached for the handle. Poor neighborhoods taught you how to survive, but they also taught you how to love. And Malik, tired, hungry, and overworked, was about to walk into a world that had never imagined someone like him would be its hero. The security guard stopped him and said, "Kid, this entrance is for patients and media only." Malik looked up, courage mixing with fear. I want to see if I can help the boy," he said softly. The guard blinked in surprise. No one took him seriously. He was just a skinny kid from the wrong street, wearing torn shoes and carrying an old backpack. But destiny doesn't ask permission. And this moment, this small step taken by a small boy with a gigantic heart, was about to shake the entire city and the entire Hale family more than they could ever imagine. Malik pushed open the heavy glass doors of St. Augustine Medical Tower with more courage than he had ever needed in his life. The bright, polished floor reflected his worn shoes, shoes that had walked through dust, broken streets, and struggles he never complained about. He stood out immediately among suits, gowns, wealthy families, reporters, and rushing nurses, like a misplaced puzzle piece. Security moved toward him instantly. "Hey kid, this entrance isn't for wandering around," one guard said, placing a firm hand on Malik's shoulder. But Malik didn't shrink back. He lifted his chin slightly, his voice steady despite the shaking in his chest. I want to get tested," he said, "for the boy on the news." The guard raised an eyebrow. "Tested for what?" "Kidney," Malik answered softly. "Maybe mine can help him." The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Conversations paused. A nurse dropping paperwork stopped mid-motion. An elderly couple turned their heads. A teenage girl gasped. A young boy, poor, skinny, with a stitched backpack and dirty laces, had just said he wanted to save the billionaire heir. Then through the crowd stepped Nurse Olivia, the head nurse on duty, known for her no-nonsense attitude. She approached Malik with curious eyes. "Why do you want to do this?" she asked, kneeling to his level. Malik shrugged a little, unsure how to put his feelings into words. "Because he's sick and people are crying. And if I can help, I should." There was no hesitation, no fear, just purity, the kind adults forget as they grow older. Nurse Olivia felt her throat tighten. Without another word, she stood and said, "Bring him in." The guard stepped aside, confused but respectful. As Malik walked deeper into the hospital, the cameras outside caught a glimpse, a tiny silhouette disappearing into the world of machines and miracles. Within minutes, Malik was seated in a small testing room while doctors questioned him gently. "Where are your parents?" one asked. "My mom is at work, she works a lot," he replied. "Does she know you're here?" "No, but she always tells me to help people if I can." The doctors exchanged glances, some skeptical, some touched. They explained the process carefully: blood tests, screenings, compatibility checks. Malik listened with wide eyes but didn't back out. He rolled up his sleeve and let them draw blood. He winced only a little. He'd had worse injuries, scraping his knees on cracked streets. "You're brave," the nurse whispered. Malik smiled faintly. "Ethan is braver, he's fighting harder." Hours passed. Tests were run, samples analyzed. The hospital's highest-level medical team observed closely. It wasn't every day that a donor came from the most unexpected corner of the city. Meanwhile, Victoria Hale, exhausted from days without sleep, sat in a VIP waiting room with her assistant. She didn't know anything about the boy being tested. She didn't even know someone new had volunteered. All she knew was that time was running out. Inside the lab, a group of doctors stood in front of the final compatibility report. The lead doctor, a man who had seen thousands of medical cases over 3 decades, felt his hands tremble. He looked at the numbers again. The genetic markers, the blood type alignment, the tissue match, the probability scores. He even repeated the test twice, then asked a second lab to confirm. When the final verification arrived, the doctor ran a hand down his face in disbelief. "This can't be real," he whispered. But it was. Malik Johnson, a boy who barely had enough food to eat, whose mother struggled for every bill, who had come from a neighborhood society had forgotten, was not just a match. He was a perfect match. One in millions, one in impossible odds. The door opened. Malik sat on a small chair, legs dangling, swinging nervously. He looked up when the doctor entered. The doctor knelt in front of him, eyes soft, voice almost trembling. "Malik," he said slowly, "we ran your tests very carefully." Malik's hands tightened on his backpack straps. "And," the doctor took a breath, "you are a perfect match for Ethan Hale. You may be the only one who can save him." The room fell into a silence that felt too big for its walls. For a moment, Malik didn't understand the magnitude. Then his eyes widened, his breath caught, and his heart pounded. A boy who had never been chosen for anything, never picked first in games, never chosen for school activities, never noticed by anyone important, had just been chosen by fate for the biggest role a human could play. The staff around him was stunned. Nurses covered their mouths. Younger doctor whispered, "This is unbelievable." Another murmured, "How could the universe line up this perfectly?" Malik swallowed hard and asked the only question that mattered to him. "Will he live if I give him mine?" The doctor nodded. "He'll have a chance, a real one." Malik's lips trembled, but he didn't hesitate. "Then I want to help, please." Word spread through the hospital like lightning, from nurses' stations to surgical prep rooms, from pediatric wings to executive offices. A poor boy, unknown, unnoticed, unheard, had done what thousands of adults couldn't. Victoria Hale received the news moments later. At first she didn't speak. Then tears fell silently down her face, not of despair but of hope returning after days of darkness. In another room, Malik waited quietly, unaware that outside the walls of that hospital, the entire city was about to hear his name. But for now, all he knew was this: a boy needed saving, and he could be the one to do it. Victoria Hale stepped into the quiet consultation room with 2 bodyguards at her side. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor, echoing through the space like a reminder of the power she carried everywhere she went. For years, she'd been known as the woman who could turn failing companies into empires with nothing more than a pen stroke. She was feared in boardrooms, respected by world leaders, and envied by every billionaire who ever shook her hand. But when she walked into that room, none of that mattered, because sitting on the edge of the hospital bed was a tiny boy with thin arms, dusty skin, and eyes too big for his tired face. Malik Johnson, the boy who might save her son. Malik sat barefoot, holding his stitched-up backpack close to his chest like a shield. His toes curled against the cold hospital floor. His shirt, faded and stretched from years of wear, hung loosely on his small frame. He looked up nervously when the powerful woman entered. Victoria's expression tightened. She'd expected someone older, someone healthy, someone who looked like a miracle donor from a privileged background. Not this. Not a child who looked like he hadn't eaten a full meal in days. Her eyes scanned his fragile body, the way his shoulders trembled, the way his hands fidgeted in nervous circles. This couldn't be the perfect match the doctors spoke about. She raised an eyebrow, her voice clipped, formal and sharp like the businesswoman she had trained herself to be. "You want money, right?" Malik blinked in confusion, as if the thought hadn't even crossed his mind. He slowly shook his head. "No, ma'am." His voice was soft, shy but steady. I don't want him to die." Victoria froze, her throat tightened. For days she had braced herself for the worst. She had watched her son slip deeper into illness, watched monitors dip, watched doctors whisper behind closed doors. She had offered the world money, more money than some would see in 10 lifetimes, because she believed that was the only power she had left. Now, standing in front of her was a boy who asked for nothing. No reward, no fame, no negotiation, just a wish to keep her son alive. Victoria felt her chest crack open. Something inside her, buried under years of corporate armor, softened for the first time in months. Her eyes burned and she blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall in front of her staff. But then Malik looked away, embarrassed, as if he feared she wouldn't believe him. That tiny gesture broke her completely. She felt the dam burst. Tears filled her eyes, hot, painful, unstoppable, not tears of fear, not the tears she'd shed alone in hallways where no one could see her weakness. These were tears of astonishment, hope, gratitude so deep it almost hurt. She dismissed her bodyguards with a small gesture. When the door closed behind them, she knelt slowly, carefully, until she was level with Malik's eyes, a billionaire kneeling in front of a barefoot boy. The symbolic weight of it filled the room like electricity. Victoria's voice cracked as she whispered, "Why would you do this?" Her hands reached out but stopped halfway, as though she feared touching him would scare him away. Malik's eyes lifted. They were honest, pure, gentle. They held no calculation, no thought of gain, no understanding of the magnitude of what he was offering. He simply repeated the truth he carried in his heart. "My mom says if you can help someone live, you should." Victoria's breath caught. The sentence hit her harder than any business blow she'd ever taken. A simple lesson from a poor household. A lesson wealth had buried under contracts, profits, and endless negotiations. She swallowed the lump in her throat, studying this small boy who somehow carried more kindness than the millionaires she met daily. She saw the faint bruising on his ankles from walking long roads. She saw the hunger in his cheeks. She saw the innocence she had forgotten the world still had. Malik fumbled with his backpack zipper, nervous from her silence. "I don't want money," he added, voice trembling. "My mom, she always helps people, even when we don't have stuff. She says the world is hard, but people don't have to be." Victoria covered her mouth with her hand as another tear slipped free. She had spent her life believing trust was risky, kindness was weakness, and generosity was a strategy used only in charity galas. But this boy, this tiny stranger who lived a life she couldn't imagine, had shown more humanity than all her business partners combined. She reached out slowly and took Malik's hand. It was small and cold. "Malik," she whispered, "you don't know what this means to me." Malik shook his head. "It's okay, I just want him to live." Victoria closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. She thought of Ethan, her sweet boy with messy hair and a laugh that filled their giant home with warmth. She thought of the way his hands squeezed hers weakly earlier that morning, as if he was drifting far away. And now hope, a chance. Brought not by money or influence, but by a barefoot child with a heart big enough to break the world. She opened her eyes and whispered, "Your mother raised you beautifully." Malik smiled shyly. "She's the best person I know." Victoria's grip tightened. "I want to meet her. I need to thank her for raising a hero." Malik blushed, staring at his feet. "I'm not a hero." Victoria shook her head slowly. "You're more than that." In that small room, two worlds, wealth and poverty, power and humility, collided and blended into something indescribably human. Victoria realized that no amount of money could ever buy what Malik had just offered: compassion without condition, sacrifice without expectation, love without reward. And Malik, for the first time in his life, felt seen, not as a poor kid, not as a boy from a forgotten street, but as someone who mattered. The meeting lasted only minutes. Yet it changed both of their lives forever. The moment Malik was taken into the pre-surgery room, the entire hospital shifted into a strange, electric silence. Nurses moved quickly, doctors whispered urgently, and monitors beeped in steady rhythms that seemed to echo through every hallway of St. Augustine Medical Tower. Outside, hundreds of reporters stood packed together in the parking lot, their cameras pointed at the entrance like a battlefield of blinking red lights. Live broadcasts ran on every major news channel. Headlines flashed: "Poor boy donates kidney to billionaire," Malik Johnson, the child hero, ETHEN hails last hope. Inside, Victoria paced outside the surgical wing, twisting her hands together, her breath trembling every time the operating room doors swung open. For the first time in her life, she realized there was nothing her wealth, power, or influence could do except wait. On the other side of the hospital, Malik's mother Angela arrived in a panic, her hair messy from rushing, her uniform still stained from her night shift, her breath sharp with fear. "Where is he?" she gasped the moment she reached the information desk. "My son, Malik, please, I need to see him, please." A nurse rushed over, guiding her gently. "He's inside surgery, ma'am. You should come with me." Angela's knees nearly buckled. Her baby boy, her little warrior, was somewhere behind those double doors, with doctors cutting into him, taking a piece of him out to save another child. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't care who was watching. She didn't care about the cameras or the staff members whispering about the boy hero. All she cared about was her son. Victoria saw her from across the waiting room, this exhausted mother who looked like she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Without hesitation, Victoria walked toward her. For a second, the two women, separated by class, wealth, and opposite worlds, just stared at each other. Angela didn't need an introduction. She had seen Victoria's face on newspapers all her life. But seeing her now, her eyes red, her face pale, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw a frightened mother. Angela whispered, "My son, my sweet boy, I didn't know he was here. I didn't know he was doing this." Victoria stepped closer, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He's saving my child," she said, voice cracking. "Your son is giving Ethan a second chance." Angela covered her mouth as she sobbed. "He's just a baby, he shouldn't be giving anything, not like this." Victoria grabbed her hands, tight, firm, desperate. "Your son is the bravest person I've ever met. I owe him my life. I owe you everything." Cameras flashed from outside the waiting room window as the two mothers, one in a worn-out uniform, one in a tailored suit, held each other and cried. No one spoke. No one dared interrupt. Because in that moment, they weren't rich or poor. They weren't from different worlds. They were simply mothers, bound by fear, hope, and the fragile thread holding their children inside the operating room. The surgery began. Malik, under anesthesia, lay on the operating table while a team of specialists carefully removed one of his kidneys. Dr. Lawson, the head surgeon, whispered, "We need to be extremely careful. This child's body is smaller, more fragile." Meanwhile, in the next operating room, Ethan lay motionless, surrounded by machines that beeped in unstable rhythms. "Prepare for transplant," another surgeon announced. For 5 hours, the world held its breath. News helicopters hovered overhead. Millions watched live-stream updates. Every minute felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a lifetime. Back in the waiting room, Victoria and Angela sat side by side, gripping each other's hands so tightly their knuckles turned white. Angela whispered prayers under her breath. Victoria stared at the lights above the operating hallway, begging silently for a miracle. They were joined by doctors, nurses, reporters, even strangers who had come to support Malik after hearing his story on the news. Homeless man placed a flower outside the entrance. A businessman sent warm food for the families waiting. A group of kids Malik's age drew pictures and taped them to the walls with messages like "Stay strong, Malik," and "You're our hero." For the first time, the city didn't divide by wealth or background. It united for two boys on two operating tables. Hours passed, 5 long, painful hours. Then finally, the surgical doors opened. Dr. Lawson stepped out. His mask was off. His eyes were tired. And every single person in that waiting room rose to their feet in perfect silence. Victoria whispered, "Please." Angela whispered, "Please let my baby be okay." Dr. Lawson took a breath. "Both Ethan and Malik are stable." The room exploded. Reporters outside screamed the news into their cameras. Nurses hugged each other. Strangers cried. Victoria exhaled so violently she almost collapsed. She turned to Angela and hugged her with all the strength she had. Angela sobbed into her shoulder, shaking uncontrollably. Thank God," Victoria whispered. "Your son saved mine. I will never forget this. Never." Angela held her tightly. "Thank you for protecting him, thank you." Two mothers, one from a mansion, one from a broken apartment, held each other in the same waiting room, united by the love they had for their children. Two families, one rich, one poor, sat side by side in gratitude and relief. Two worlds, divided by life, were united by a surgery that proved humanity still lived in the smallest among them. And in the recovery rooms, two boys slept peacefully, one having given life, the other having received it, connected forever by the miracle that began with a poor child's unshakable kindness. Malik woke to the sound of voices, soft at first, then sharper, overlapping, urgent. At first he thought it was the neighbors again, arguing in the hallway like they always did. But when he opened his eyes, he saw unfamiliar shadows sliding under his bedroom door, long, thin, moving in rhythm with flashes of white and blue light. Camera flashes. He sat up quickly. His heart pounded. He was used to waking up early, used to helping his mother at dawn, used to pushing through exhaustion, but nothing prepared him for what waited outside his front door. As soon as he stepped into the living room, his mother froze mid-sentence. "Malik," she whispered, "don't be scared, just stay behind me." Then the doorbell rang. Once, twice. Then someone knocked, firm, authoritative, the kind of knock that didn't ask permission, it demanded presence. When his mother opened the door, the hallway exploded with noise. Reporters, camera crews, photographers, people shouting his name, like he was someone important. "Malik, Malik, is it true you volunteered your kidney? Malik, how old are you? Why did you do it? Malik, are you aware the Hale family is looking for you?" His mother shielded him, but it was too late. Every lens had already captured his face. But all the shouting fell silent the moment a woman stepped through the crowd. Tall, graceful, composed, even though her eyes were swollen from crying. Victoria Hale, the billionaire. The woman whose son he had almost died to save. The woman who could buy a city block with a single signature, but right now she looked nothing like power. She looked like a mother. "Mrs. Hale," his mother breathed. Victoria didn't answer. She didn't speak until she stood directly in front of Malik. And then she broke. Her voice trembled, tears sliding down her face. "I came to thank you," she said softly, "for offering to save my son when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose." Malik swallowed hard. "I just wanted to help." That made her cry even harder. Behind her, the reporters lowered their cameras. Some even wiped their eyes. It wasn't a story anymore. It was something raw and human. Then Victoria turned, signaling her assistant. Papers were placed into her hands. The cameras clicked like fireworks. And right there, in Malik's small, cramped, worn-down apartment, she said something that stunned the world. "From today onward, Malik Johnson is my son's brother. And my responsibility." Gasps rippled through the crowd. His mother dropped the dish towel in her hands. Malik froze, unsure if he heard correctly. Victoria continued, her voice steadying. "The world needs to know the kind of young man he is, brave, selfless, rare." She looked at his mother. "And no child like Malik should live without support." She held up the first document. "This is a full debt clearance for your family." His mother staggered backward. "The next document. This is the title to a new home, fully paid, fully furnished." Malik's breath caught. And then she held up the third. "This is a long-term education trust. Malik, your schooling, from today to Harvard University, is completely funded." Gasps erupted again. Malik felt like the world slipped out from beneath him. He had dreamed of Harvard. He had seen it in videos. He had read about it in magazines at the barber shop. But kids like him didn't go to places like that. Kids like him didn't even dare to dream that far. But Victoria wasn't finished. Her hands shook as she unfolded the final document, thicker, stamped, official, the kind that changed lives. "And this," she looked at him with a tremor in her voice, "is something I created because of you." She turned it around to show the cameras. The Malik Foundation, a charity dedicated to providing free medical tests, support, and life-saving surgeries for low-income families. Inspired by a boy who had almost given his life for someone he didn't even know. Malik stared at her, speechless. "You changed my son's life," she said softly. "Let me change yours and many others because of your kindness." His mother covered her mouth, tears falling freely. Victoria knelt to look Malik in the eyes. "You are not invisible anymore," she whispered. "You're not a story we will forget tomorrow. You are family now." The cameras flashed again, but Malik didn't notice. All he could see was her sincerity. All he could hear was the heartbeat in his ears. The billionaire didn't just repay him. She rewrote his fate. The next few hours were a blur of headlines, interviews, and tears, most of them his mother. She kept repeating the same thing. "We are going to be okay now. We are finally going to be okay." Victoria stayed the entire time, speaking to reporters with the fierce protectiveness of a lioness defending her own. She told the world that kindness mattered, that bravery mattered, that privilege meant nothing without responsibility. And in every sentence, she repeated Malik's name with pride. By evening, their story was the #1 trending topic worldwide. The boy who offered his life. The billionaire who adopted his heart. The foundation that would save THOUSANDS. But for Malik, all the attention, the cameras, the noise dissolved into one quiet moment. Victoria resting a hand on his shoulder and saying, "You gave the world hope today. Let me help you become everything you were meant to be." As night fell and the apartment finally grew quiet, Malik stared at the stack of documents on the table, proof that life could change in a single day. Proof that his kindness had reshaped destiny. He went to sleep not as a poor boy ignored by the world, but as the boy who inspired it. And for the first time in his life, Malik dreamed without fear. Because the future was finally his. Years later, Ethan and Malik stood on a stage together. Malik, now a doctor himself, spoke to thousands. "I didn't give a kidney to get a reward. I gave it because every life matters." The crowd gave a standing ovation. The two brothers smiled at each other, proof that the world can still be changed by one brave, selfless heart.